Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of holophase. We have already certified something very strict, and we have to keep it in our hands as we move forward. We have certified that public structure can only be extracted inside licensed finite windows, with passports, coherence, identifiability, a declared ceiling and max, and a clean domain D where our operators are legal. We have certified the local lift. The first derivative object A equals d phi tilde, finite jets up to the ceiling, and consistency checks that refuse romance and force classification. Now we are stitching windows into an atlas. And today we install the rule that makes global meaning possible at all. If it is real, it survives translation. Now listen carefully, because part 26 is one of those parts that sounds like it is just technical, but it is actually one of the deepest honesty rules in the entire program. It is the rule that separates the world from our bookkeeping. We can build a perfect atlas of windows and still fail to build the world. For one simple reason. Two honest windows can describe the same overlap using different languages. And if we do not know how to translate, we will mistake different languages for different realities. That is how science gets haunted. That is how people invent mysteries that are really just unit conversions, reference choices, and lift choices, dressed up as new forces. So our mission in this part is simple to say and hard to fake. We enforce that overlap translations are lawful. In the overlap between two certified windows, the difference between their lift choices must be only integer turns and constant shifts, and the jets must transform compatibly. If we cannot enforce that, we do not have public structure. We have private dialects. And our core rule, the one we will keep repeating until it becomes instinct, is this. Chart choice is not physics. Overlap transforms are bookkeeping. Only overlap invariant outputs are public. Let us build the listener picture with a plain, everyday scene. Imagine two people measuring the same mountain. One measures altitude in meters and sets sea level in one city as the zero. Another measures altitude in feet and sets sea level in a different city as the zero. They point to the same rock, and one says 1200, the other says 3900. If we panic, we conclude the mountain has two heights. But if we are calm, we say, no. This is translation. We need a conversion and an offset. And the moment we translate correctly, the disagreement disappears. The mountain did not change. The language changed. Now imagine the most dangerous version of this mistake. Imagine someone writes a paper claiming that the mountain secretly grows taller when you switch from meters to feet. That is what happens when bookkeeping leaks into physics. That is exactly what this part prevents. Now we bring it into holophase terms, but we keep it speakable. Our only primitive token is phi, written as phi, a mapping from X to S1, meaning phi assigns each event a position on a circle. And public meaning is only differences, delta phi, inside licensed finite windows. Absolute phi is mute. We do not speak absolutes. We speak comparisons. But calculus does not work directly on a circle. To differentiate, we do something that is allowed but dangerous. We lift. We unwrap the circle onto a line, and we call that unwrapped version phi tilde, written as phi tilde. That lift is not unique. There are many equally valid ways to unwrap a circle onto a line. The lift is a choice of bookkeeping. It is like choosing where to put the zero mark on a measuring tape and how many times you decided to wrap the tape around the circle before you wrote down the number. Now here is the key law we installed today, and we will say it in slow audio language so nobody misses it. In an overlap region, where two windows both describe the same underlying phi, their lifts can differ only by a constant shift and by full turns around the circle. Full turns are integer multiples of 2 pi. 2 pi is one complete cycle. So the lawful translation has this form. Phi tilde in window 2 equals phi tilde in window 1 plus 2 pi times an integer k plus a constant c. We say it again because this is the heart. Phi tilde 2 equals phi tilde 1 plus 2 pi k plus c, where k is an integer and c is a constant. That is it. That is the whole legal translation law for lifts in overlaps when the underlying phi is a circle-valued field. And now watch the magic that is not magic at all. When we differentiate, constants vanish. The derivative of a constant is 0, and the derivative of 2 pi times an integer is also 0, because it is still just a constant shift on the line. So the first derivative object, a, defined as d phi tilde, is invariant under this lawful translation. A does not care where we place the 0. A does not care how many full turns we added. A is the same in both windows, on the overlap if both are honest. This is why the lift exists at all. The lift is a private convenience, but its derivative, when properly guarded and domain-typed, becomes a public candidate. So part 26 is the machine that checks whether two windows really are talking about the same structure, or whether one of them is accidentally smuggling its bookkeeping into its claims. Let us anchor it to the toolchain line because we are not allowed to float. Here is the pipeline, spoken as one line because this compiler must be repeatable. Licensed window, then passport and coherence and identifiability, then nmax and uncertainty, then local lift, then cuts if needed, then excisions, then certified domain D, then A equals D phi tilde, then finite jets up to nmax, then invariance collapse, then topology and defects, then invariant bases, then stability and entities, then scale stratification, then escape test, then handoff. We are now deep inside the invariance collapse and atlas overlap stage. We are deciding what survives translation between patches. That is global meaning. Now we make it even more concrete with a scale crossing analogy so it lands in the bones. Think of a microscope and a satellite. A satellite sees a city at night as a glowing pattern. A microscope sees the wiring inside a lamp. Both are light, but the descriptions are at different scales. If someone says, the city lights turn off when I switch microscopes, we laugh, because we know that is a description mismatch, not a city event. But in science, we often do the same mistake in more sophisticated clothes. We change our chart, we change our gauge, we change our reference, and we treat the difference as a discovery. Part 26 forbids that. Part 26 forces us to translate before we interpret. Now let us bring in triunity, because we are not allowed to forget it even for 1 minute. Every certified structure has 3 readouts of one differentiation: omega, kappa, nu. Omega is cadence, the rate of comparison change. Kappa is texture, the pattern of variation. Nu is drift, the transport of patterns. We do not treat time, space, and motion as primitives. Omega, kappa, nu are just labels for 3 simultaneous readouts of the same certified derivative content. If translation changes omega, kappa, or nu, then we have not translated. We have changed the bookkeeping. The real readouts must recompose across overlaps. Now, how do we enforce this in a way that is not just philosophy, but an audit? We do it with gates, but we will not speak them as a dry checklist. We will speak them as a story of what an honest auditor does. First, before we translate anything, we must ask, are we even allowed to compare these two windows? This is the overlap legality gate. Do they actually overlap in a meaningful region? Is there an intersection that is not empty, not too thin, not too polluted by alias zones? And do both passports allow the same kind of claim in that overlap? If one window can certify only first order jets and the other claims third order jets, the overlap comparison must be typed accordingly. If the overlap is not legally certified, we do not argue. We refuse. No overlap, no global meaning. Second, even if there is an overlap, we must demand a lawful transition. This is where the transition legality gate and the lift integer gate live. We ask, when window 1 and window 2 each choose a lift, do their lifts differ by only 2 pi times an integer plus a constant across the overlap, except where declared cuts or defects force a change? In audio language, is the difference between their unwrapped phase numbers equal to some whole number of full turns plus one fixed offset everywhere we check? Or is it drifting in a way that cannot be explained? If it is drifting, then something is wrong. Either a cut was not declared, or aliasing contaminated one window, or the domain is illegal in that region, or there is a defect token inside the overlap that changes the lift relation. But we do not call it new physics yet. We classify. Third, once we confirm the translation is lawful, we enforce jet equivalence. This is the overlap jet equivalent seal. It says, after translating, the jets must match within uncertainty. The derivatives should be the same in both languages because constants and integer terms vanish under differentiation. If A differs between windows in the overlap, and we have accounted for lawful translation, then we do not have certified structure. We have a mismatch, and mismatches must be diagnosed, not worshipped. Fourth, we enforce invariance on anything we dare to call observable at the atlas level. If an observable changes when we translate from one patch's language to another patch's language, it is not a public observable. It is a private bookkeeping artifact. It must be withdrawn. Now we do the mandatory stress test, because every part must include at least one explicit invariant stress test. Let us do it cleanly and spoken. We apply 4 translation stresses. Stress 1. Phi goes to phi plus a constant. We say it as shift the phase circle by a fixed angle everywhere. This is gauge-like. Does our claim structure change? Answer. Any public structure must not change. Delta phi comparisons are unchanged if the shift is constant. A equals d phi tilde is unchanged because the derivative of a constant is 0. So if a claim structure changes under this shift, it is not public. Stress 2. Lift shift. We choose a different lift, meaning we add 2 pi times an integer and add a constant c to phi tilde. Does A change? No. Do the jets change? No, except the zero-order value of phi tilde itself, which is not public. So if someone tries to certify absolute phase value at a point, we demote it. Only differences and derivatives can be public. Stress 3. Chart change across overlap. We translate from patch 1's chart to patch 2's chart. The overlap transform must be bookkeeping only, not physics. If the claimed effect appears only in one chart and disappears in another, it is not an effect. It is a chart artifact. Stress 4. Cut relocation. If we use the branch cut to define a lift, we slide the cut to a different place keeping the domain legal. Any certified invariant must remain the same. If the result depends on where we drew the cut line, it is not public. It is a drawing choice. That is the stress test. It is not optional. It is the immune system. Now we state the prediction in the episode 14 sense, meaning not what will happen in time, but what cannot be certified and what failure signature must appear instead. Our prediction is chart choice effects vanish under overlap enforcement. Any residual becomes a typed error, like cut bookkeeping error, aliasing contamination, domain violation, passport incompatibility, or a defect token. In plain language, when two windows seem to disagree, we predict that almost always the disagreement will collapse into one of our known failure bins once we enforce lawful translation. The supposed new phenomenon shrinks under audit. And our falsifier is also stated in episode 14 style. It is not a future event. It is a failure signature that, if found, forces revision. The falsifier is two equivalent overlaps yield different certified invariants after full equivalence collapse attempts. Meaning, we have two windows with a genuine overlap. We have lawful translation verified. We have cuts accounted for, aliasing excised, domain certified, passports compatible, uncertainty budgets propagated, and still the overlap invariants disagree beyond uncertainty, with no admissible obstruction classification. That would be an escape candidate. That would trigger the escape protocol later. It would mean that translation is bookkeeping is not sufficient, and we would need a justified extension of the grammar. Now let us make this live with examples across scales so it does not stay in a math cloud. At the human scale, the simplest example is money. £10 and $13 can be the same value depending on exchange rates. If we do not translate, we create fake surprises. In the same way, face values in different lifts can look different even when the underlying structure is the same. Translation prevents fake surprises. At the engineering scale, the simplest example is voltage. Voltage at a point is not absolute unless you choose a ground reference. Two engineers can report different voltages at the same node if they chose different grounds, but they will agree on voltage differences across components. The difference is physical. The absolute is bookkeeping. That is exactly our rule. Phi tilde itself is like absolute voltage, lift dependent. A equals d phi tilde, or delta phi between points, is like voltage difference, public. At the climate scale, consider temperature anomaly. Different datasets choose different baselines, like average temperature from 1950 to 1980, or average from 1980 to 2010. If you do not translate baselines, you will claim the planet changed differently across datasets. But after baseline translation, the anomaly trends can be compared. Again, constant shifts are bookkeeping, not physics. At the brain scale, consider neural phase. One lab might define the phase 0 at the trough of a theta wave, another at the peak. If we do not translate, we will claim different brain states. But once we translate by constant phase shift, we discover the same oscillation. The structure is invariant. At the quantum scale, consider interference. The absolute phase of a wave function is not observable. Relative phase is. If someone builds a theory on absolute phase at a point, they have built on bookkeeping. Our translator refuses that. It certifies only what survives. At the cosmic scale, consider coordinate charts in astronomy. Different coordinate systems can make objects appear to curve or accelerate because the chart is bending, not the object. Without translation discipline, you invent forces. With translation discipline, you separate real invariants from coordinate ghosts. Now, we must be extremely disciplined here. Episode 14 does not allow dynamics. So we do not say it accelerates because. We only say charts can produce different descriptions, and the public content is what survives lawful translation. Now we build a central audio story that fuses both versions. The atlas is a translation machine. We already learned in part 25 that a world is not one window. A world compiles as an atlas, many licensed windows with auditable overlap agreements. Today we add the missing piece. Agreement means agreement after lawful translation. It is not enough that two windows have similar numbers. They might be speaking different languages. Agreement must be checked through a translator, and the translator itself must be audited. That is why we log transition integers. So let us describe what we actually do operationally in the simplest possible spoken language. We have window 1 and window 2. Each has a passport. Each has a certified domain D1 and D2. Their overlap domain is D-overlap, meaning the intersection of D1 and D2, after excising alias zones from both, with a color away from boundaries if needed. On D-overlap, each window provides a lift, phi tilde 1 and phi tilde 2, and from them each provides A1 equals D phi tilde 1 and A2 equals D phi tilde 2, and jets up to each window's nmax. Now we compute the transition between lifts. At sample points in the overlap, we compute the difference, phi tilde 2 minus phi tilde 1. If the windows are lawful, that difference should be constant plus 2 pi times an integer. But we must allow one important complication, cuts and defects. If the overlap crosses a declared cut, then the integer k can jump across that cut line. That is allowed, because the lift is allowed to jump by full turns across a cut. But the jump must be declared and movable, not hidden. If there is a defect inside the loop, the lift may not exist globally without cuts. Again, allowed, but must be declared and accounted for. The translator does not deny topology, it simply forces topology to be honest. So we build a transition table. In plain language, we make a little ledger that says, in overlap region number 1, k equals 0, constant c equals this. In overlap region number 2, k equals 1, constant c equals that. And we log where the k changes, and we compare it to declared cuts and defect candidates. If k changes in a place where no cut or defect is declared, we raise a flag. Then we test jets. We compute the difference between A2 and A1. If translation is lawful, that difference should be near zero within uncertainty on the overlap, away from cut discontinuities and excise zones. If it is not, we classify failure. Now we give the listener the big punchline, because it is the carry that belongs in the bloodstream. If it is real, it survives translation. If it disappears under translation, it was your language, not the world. Now we need to offer one clean, compact example that feels like a lie detector, but for translation. We will do it without heavy mathematics, but we will still speak the key symbols. Imagine two teams measuring the same rotating pattern in a fluid tank. One team defines phase 0 at the first marker on the rim. Another team defines phase 0 at a different marker. Their phi tilde values differ by constant shift. If one team claims there is a new vortex at this location, but that claim exists only because their phase 0 was set differently, then it is counterfeit. A vortex is a topological token. It should survive translation. Its winding number should survive. It should not depend on where you put the 0. If the vortex disappears when we shift the 0, it was never a vortex. It was a bookkeeping artifact misread as structure. This is how Part 26 prevents hallucinated physics. It refuses to let us build discoveries out of coordinate choice. Now we must include the audit artifact in a way that is audio-friendly. We will not dump a long code block. We will speak it as a narrated ledger entry. Audit artifact, transition ledger, example entry. Window ID W1, passport P1, domain D1, ceiling N max 1. Window ID W2, passport P2, domain D2, ceiling N max 2. Overlap domain D overlap with excisions listed. Coherence status in overlap, gamma above threshold, identifiability rank supports claim jet order, uncertainty budgets propagated. Transition fit, measure difference phi tilde 2 minus phi tilde 1 equals constant c plus 2 pi times integer k. Best fit, c equals, say, 0.3 radians modulo 2 pi, and k equals 0 on the left region and 1 across the declared cut line. Lift integer gate, pass, because k is integer valued within tolerance and changes only across declared cut. Jet equivalent seal, compare A1 and A2. Residual magnitude is below threshold everywhere on the overlap except within the cut color, which is excluded by domain typing. Invariance gate, compute claimed observables in both windows. Any observable that changes under translation is demoted. That is the kind of artifact we log. It is an overlap report, not a story. It is what allows other people to audit us. Now we must say the revocation clause. But before we do, we remind ourselves of the episode 14 always true line. Episode 14 does not describe reality. It specifies the conditions under which reality can be described at all. Part 26 is one of those conditions. It says, without lawful translation, there is no global meaning. There is only local dialect. So here is the carry one more time, in the simplest sentence. If it is real, it survives translation. And now we end with the revocation clause, with teeth, because without teeth, we drift. Revocation clause. Any observable, not invariant under overlap transforms, is withdrawn from the certified set. Any claim of a new effect that appears only under chart choice, lift choice, cut placement, or reference shift, and that fails the translation audit, is rejected as non-public bookkeeping output. If two windows in a certified overlap disagree after lawful translation, and the mismatch cannot be classified as cut bookkeeping, aliasing, domain violation, passport incompatibility, or a defect token, then the claim is not promoted. It is logged as an escape candidate and triggers the later escape protocol. Outputs produced by unverified transitions are revoked. And we also log the practical invitation for the listener who wants the deepest formal work. If you want to dive under this audio surface into the full formal discipline, you can find the formal work on Zenodo by searching for holophase. So part 26 is complete. We have installed the translation machine. We have enforced transition integers, overlap jet equivalence, and invariance under lawful translation. We have made it illegal to confuse language with world. We have made global truth equal to what survives translation across overlaps. And we have done it without dynamics, without stories about what happens, only with the rules that decide what can be publicly certified at all. Always, peace be upon you.